Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is Unit 1 Notes for British Literature. So I thought, since we'll be talking about British literature, we actually understand what we mean by the term British. And it's not straightforward for non-Britishers, and really nothing is, it seems, with British in general. Now, there are several terms. The term England, for example, is different meaning than the term Great Britain, which has a different meaning than United Kingdom. It's important to appreciate these differences, I think, because its current political significance and just as a general knowledge for understanding the history of these peoples. The most modern term, I guess, would be United Kingdom, like United States of America. This is the most inclusive, most modern terms. The term England is very different. So, United Kingdom, in fact, is 4 countries in one, and there are 4 different countries that cooperate and into a United Kingdom. And these include, of course, England, which is this part of the British Island, England, and Scotland, and Northern Ireland and Wales. And these 4 countries are sufficiently different in culture and heritage that sometimes they don't get along. In fact, I believe it was about 2 years ago, the Scottish has an itch again to leave the United Kingdom and make a country of their own independently. So, nevertheless, they cooperate into one country whose capital is, of course, London. Now, so the United Kingdom refers to England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So those are the 4 countries that make up United Kingdom. This is Republic of Ireland, which is the country of Ireland. Republic, which is a different country. So when we say they're Irish, or we really mean Republic of Ireland. This whole island is called Ireland itself, but it's really two countries in one. Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom, and Ireland by itself. So that's the first thing to appreciate. Okay, and that is what we mean by United Kingdom. And that United Kingdom, in fact, is 4 countries in one. The term Great Britain, okay, is England, Scotland, and Wales minus Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland and the rest of this England have not gotten along very well. Partly because of the religious primarily because of the religious differences, but nevertheless, so there's more to it than even these 4 geographic locations, because the British Empire, extended to a quarter of the globe's land. So the Great Britain has many other properties, so to speak. So this is proper England plus Scotland plus Wales gives you Great Britain, and plus Northern Ireland gives you United Kingdom. So the most inclusive term is United Kingdom. Now this is kind of important because of the history. It makes understanding of the history of this much easier. So here is the United Kingdom again. Now, as a summary, this is Great Britain plus Northern Ireland gives United Kingdom. This is Republic of Ireland. This island over here is called Ireland. Together, it has 2 countries in one. The whole of this is the British Isles, or the islands of the British. That's what that means over there. Okay, now to understand the history of the early history of the early British history, we need to understand that it was occupied by the great Roman Empire for a good period of time. And you can see the Roman Empire extended quite a bit of time at its zenith, but when it went to Britain, it had a hard time going beyond this area because the tribes and kingdoms that existed there would be fighting. They could not actually conquer all of England. If they had, they might have. If they had time, they might have. But their empire started to disintegrate before they could do that. So they built this wall called Hadrian's Wall. The Romans did, to prevent of their enemies from entering what they had already conquered of England. So this was the England, the Roman Empire in the 2nd century, 117 AD, just before Marcus Aurelius came into power a few times ago. Now listen, now this is how the Roman Empire started out. So this is negative 200, this is before Common Era, and you can see the Roman Empire was quite a bit established at the time of Isa al-Islam right here. This is so, and then it starts to fall apart. See, okay, so, and then it divides into two. So what happens to the Roman Empire is this, okay? So it has very early beginnings from Rome, which is in Italy, right there, okay, and and it grows very big. And let's just say this is a Common Era, like one Common Era, and then it falls apart in 475 Common Era, okay, and it fractures, and before that it divides into two. This is the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire, and from here, the start of the Middle Ages is considered to be over here when the last vestiges of the Roman Empire exit. So in starting from about 400 Common Era, the Romans start to retreat, the British, the England, and go back, and then by 475 there's really no Romans there in England, one of the reasons they disintegrate is because other tribes start to come to England. These are the Anglo-Saxon tribes that invade from this area and start to settle, and they will establish what we know as the British culture. So look at this, they're growing. This is like the time of Socrates and stuff, and then 220. This is about time of Isa al-Islam right there. And this is after Isa al-Islam, okay? And then as you'll see, when this goes to about 400, they start to lose territory. See, they divide into two, and they already have left England. Okay, it's like that. So after a while, in the end, the Western Roman Empire that used to rule England disappears. So here's beginning 43 AD, they start coming over here, and the Romans aren't able to capture the entire island, and they kind of stop over here at the Hadrian's Wall. Okay, but the Romans do two things. Okay, they established the infrastructure. The Romans had lots of roads, and they had running water, etc. So they do develop England a little bit, and this helps establishing the rest of the when they leave. So the reasons Romans leave obviously is very complicated. Part of the reason is because they're being invaded from the north by the Germanic tribes, and they're basically falling apart. Also from internal empire issues, they have a hard time managing the very big empire. So nevertheless, when the Romans leave, starting about 400 Common Era, okay, other tribes are taking over their place. Apparently the history of this is subject to some debate as to exactly how it happened, because there's very little records from these times. But nevertheless, these were either invasion routes or migration routes. So was it a violent invasion? Was it a migration? But nevertheless, the Anglos and Saxons, they did come here and settled. The Anglos actually settled over here, and the Saxons settled over here, and East Saxons and West Saxons, in fact London is in Sussex, the territory over here. So they settled in this area. Okay, Now the other tribes came over here, settled over here, and they came over, settled over here, and then they came over, settled over here. So the tribes that settled in northern England are different from then over here, than from here, and that, as you can see, is historically significant because those demarcate the different cultures that would establish there, and that affects what happens in England to this day. So here's again is the invasions of Roman Empire. So Roman Empire fell apart because of all these what they would call barbaric tribes invaded them. Not at all at one time, of course. These would be separate by decades or centuries apart. Goths, the Vandals, and the Huns, and man, they really did a number. And then and the Franks, etc. So. These tribes did not insult the English as much as you can see as they damaged the Roman Empire, so to speak. When this was happening, the Anglos and Saxons and the Jutes, they were establishing what would become the England in the future. So this happened. Now, by the time the start of the Middle Ages, which is the beginning of the British literature as we're going to study it, 475 is an arbitrary date that is marked as the beginning of the Middle Ages to about 1500. Okay, now this, therefore, when we study this, is primarily a culture that is established by these folks who migrated or invaded England. Okay, so England. Now, on the other hand, there's one thing that they did. It's not that they erased the cultures that were before, because Romans, when they were here, they established Christianity as a religion, and that was preserved in monasteries wherever the monasteries existed, and that's really where written writing was, in monasteries. So even though the Romans left, the Christianity that they had brought did not leave, and it survived. And early British literature is a mix of pagan literature and the vestiges of Christianity that remained here, and strong Christian influence is seen even in pagan literature like Beowulf that we shall read, inshallah. So Anglos and Saxons, as you can see, and this was how they divided up England, so to speak. So here again, Anglos and Saxons and Jutes that they established over here, and Northumbrians would be a Christian tribe that would establish there. Okay, so that's a brief history of what happened to England. Now, I'm going to review here, inshallah, was discovered. What is related to us in historical overview in Unit 1. So Unit 1, okay, there is a historical overview, okay, and they're talking about the Middle Ages, okay. Middle Ages are sometimes called the Dark Ages, which is a term that I don't like because it supposes that, everything outside of that was light, which is a subject to debate. But nevertheless, an arbitrary date, as we have suggested, is from 475 Common Era. 475 Common Era. Let me try to do it a little neatly. 475 Common Era to about 1500 Common Era, when after 1492, when Europe started to colonize other nations. Perhaps really 1450 is an important date because of the invention of the printing press, okay, which changed Europe dramatically. But nevertheless, from here to here, okay. The Roman Empire stretched, just to give you an idea, for 500 years. Okay, it's reasonably easy to remember. It's like most of the Roman Empire was like from 25 BC, before Common Era, 475 plus 25, about 500 years. Most of it was after Celestial, approximately. So this is the time frame of the Middle Ages, from 475 to approximately 500. It's about, obviously, it's about 1,000 years of duration of time, and it's not very easy to demarcate something like this. But nevertheless, this is the time of knights in shining armors and castles that were built in England. Okay, and the reason is from here to here. Okay, they really were quite illiterate. Okay, and we don't have a lot of records from this time because, for that reason, the printing press being invented here changed the literacy. So we don't know a lot about the Middle Ages. One reason being that a lot of people, even some kings, could not read. The literacy was primarily preserved in monasteries by monks who actually are the sources of some of the manuscripts, such as manuscripts that we read even today. The only sources of manuscripts that we read even today. Okay, so church was a very key element in preserving the literature of the Middle Ages. The first literature that came about is therefore in Old English. So Old English is a evolutionary development, so to speak, or maturation of Germanic languages, Germanic languages. Okay, with that Germanic languages, that means the languages that were spoken by the Anglos, Angles and Saxons, and etc. So these languages evolved into Old English. Now, if you and I heard Old English now, we won't be able to recognize this, and this would evolve into New English, which was more recognizable to us today. Now, so Old English is the origins of this are Germanic languages, but you must remember the really learned people used Latin, okay, because the monasteries where the monks used to live were established during the Roman times, and they actually used Latin still, and Latin was the language of the church for a very, very, very long time. So so they used Latin, and many Latin words also would eventually melt into the development of English. Okay, so that became Old English. So initial literature would be written in Old English. Okay, so the people who wrote Beowulf, for example, Beowulf was written somewhere over here. Now, Beowulf is a story about a hero, who fights monsters, etc. And there's a Bede, B-E-D-E, which is a monk, a historian, who wrote a history book of the English people. Initially, they spoke Old English. They spoke Old English. Now, Bede, even though he spoke Old English because he was a monk, he spoke Old English, but he was a monk. He wrote his writings in Latin, and that should make sense as to why that is. Okay, so now, what did these people write about? Okay, now what they wrote about has been directly influenced from what they had been in the recent times. So history, okay, really is the script that dictates what people generally write. Okay, now we should talk about the major themes of medieval literature. Major themes. Before this, I just wanted to tell you over here, starting with 1096, is where the Crusades are. Okay, Crusades. So a lot of Crusades. The first Crusade was in 1096, and we'll go up to here. So these are the Crusade area times. Okay. Another very important event happens, which we have to definitely mark over here, is in 1066. It's like Order 66, execute Order 1066 is England is conquered by French. Okay, so here I'm trying to draw England over here. Okay, it's an island over here. It's a gross description of England, and that's the Ireland over here. And here's the mainland over here is France, and over here. Okay, so this is okay. So England is invaded by the French and conquered by the French. So here are the French, here are the Normans. Okay, so the Normans, okay, they invade and conquer England. So who does that? Okay, the person who actually does that is William of Normandy, or William the Conqueror. The French do it. And British will be under their influence, and they'll speak French after a while, but Latin will still exist, and English will still exist. Okay, William of Normandy. So William of Normandy, W-N. Okay, he will go northwest. William of Normandy will go northwest, his northwest, and conquer England in 1066. Okay, and then England would be ruled by these kings. In fact, when in World War II, when the British would American British forces would invade Europe to fight Germans, they would land their troops on the beaches of Normandy right there. Okay, the beaches of Normandy. Anyway, so this is a very important historical date. That's when England is conquered by the French, Franks, the William of Normandy, or William the Conqueror in 1066. Okay, and it gives a new character, and it turns English history into a different direction. Okay, so that's that. But now we're talking still about the medieval period from here to here. Okay, there are three major themes. Now, there are three major themes, okay? And these three themes are easy to understand if you consider the following. See, people write about whatever occupies their mind, see? And the three most common themes in this time are what's called a heroic ideal, okay, hero tales, this is my terminology, or heroic ideals. Okay, so one major theme, the stories that are written are heroic ideals, like Beowulf. Okay, in other words, what is a hero supposed to be? Okay, and this the second major theme is of course Christian themes. Okay, okay, Christian themes, and then finally there is what's courtly love, and so courtly love. Okay. Now this is not difficult to understand because these are really key elements of human emotional attachments, really. So now there are a lot of heroic tales, especially early in the medieval period. Now hero tales, okay, they idealized the king, and they idealized the soldier, warrior. So they idealized the king and idealized the warrior. Okay, that's important for societies that are fragmented and their life and security depends on the king. Okay, depends on the king. So they need to really make sure that people are ready to fight for him. In the early British history, as you can understand, there was innumerable tribes that were fighting with each other, the Anglo-Saxons and the others that came. So they were not one big united country. So each was fighting for their survival, and the survival of the king was paramount to their own way of life and survival. So the ideal, which is the dedication to the king and war and dedication to the warrior tribe and a fellow warrior, becomes a very important part. So stories are constructed to inspire people to such ideals. So early in history, this become when society stabilizes, where they don't need to have heroic ideals. When society stabilizes, then they don't have as many hero tales. Okay, um, and almost as a sign of insecurity in a society, right? But nevertheless, when society is more secure, they don't have as many hero tales, and then they tend to have more courtly love type stories, where a knight has, an ideal of how a gentleman should behave to a lady, and etc. And the Christian themes, in fact, are always intermixed with all of these, and they kind of tame the character of the hero. Now, near the end of the Middle Ages, the king was more of a diplomat than a ruler who with armies. So the heroic tales were not as important, although the kings would continue to fight as long as kings existed. But they were more of a diplomat and administrators than they were warriors. Okay, now the Christianity that the Anglo-Saxons, etc., inherited was there before they had arrived, and in fact there was conflict between the values of these two things, and Christianity tended to be more, not it did not honor the hero and the king, obviously, in themes. In fact, there are a lot of times there were conflicts. Your book mentions like Henry, what's his name, King Henry II, King Henry II, who was irritated by the Archbishop Thomas Becket. So he was upset with this Archbishop Becket and his his men, and basically just went and killed him, and misunderstood what he really wanted to do. So Henry II, however, felt compelled to do penance, because that's not what he intended. But nevertheless, there were conflicts between them, and England as a country did not become Christian until Edwin, King Edwin, actually became a Christian. So eventually Christianity would dominate to become the major religion, to become the religion of the country. Now, as I said, later on, courtly love dominated themes in the literature of these times. So this was the beginning, and this was like near the end. Courtly love, where a knight in shining armor would woo or try to win the favor of a lady, and it showed basically it modeled the behavior of what a gentleman was. These values were still also in opposition to Christian values, nevertheless, and that's the. So these are the major themes that are seen. The Canterbury Tales, which is very famous. Okay, Canterbury Tales is actually a story where pilgrims are actually going they're traveling to the shrine of Thomas Becket here. So they're actually going to the shrine of Thomas Becket, and over here, Canterbury Tales is famous in Chaucer with that one. It's interesting. So so that's kind of the themes, and that's a brief summary of this part of the unit. Until next time, Assalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi.